How much do you need in order to retire and live your dream life in retirement? Is it $1 million, $2 million, maybe more? Do you have a specific number in your head, and are you on track to reach that number by the age you want to retire? And if you're behind, how much do you need to invest now in order to catch up and make sure you get where you want to be by retirement? These can be some very specific and tricky questions to answer, but ones that are very important to answer in order to make sure you're successful in planning for the future. Have you ever read or seen those articles titled something like how much money you should have saved by your age, and they tell you you should have something like $20,000 saved by the time you're 25 and 3 times your salary by the time you're 40? In my opinion, these numbers couldn't be more useless, and all they do is cause you to compare yourself with some very trivial number when in reality you're not an average person in an average situation. Everyone's financial needs are going to be different in retirement, and you need a way to determine a number that's specific to you. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. Hi, I'm Austin. I'm an accountant and personal finance nerd, and I'm going to share and walk through the personal tool I've built and use myself to help you determine how much you personally need for retirement, as well as how much you should be investing now in order to get there. So with that, let's dive in. Now, as we go through this retirement calculator, make sure to download a copy of it for yourself so that you can follow along with your own information and personal situation, which will help you determine your specific retirement number. In order to do this, simply go to File, make a copy on the top left, name the file whatever you would like for your own purposes, and then select Make a Copy down here. As we go through each step of this calculator, keep in mind that anything that's highlighted in yellow is what you'll actually put into the spreadsheet, and anything that's in green is what it will actually calculate, so there's no need to touch these fields. This calculator does take into account a lot of different assumptions, so make sure to take some time to enter what you think your personal assumptions will be leading to retirement. Starting in the first section, under General Info, I'm going to enter my current age, and hypothetically in this situation, I'll say that I'm 25 and I want to work a 40-year career and plan to retire at the standard age of 65. I'm also going to assume since I'm younger, I'm going to be starting from scratch with $0 in my portfolio, but make sure that if you do have any amount saved or invested, that you put that amount in this next field here. Moving on now to the assumed rate of return during my working years. This is when I invest my money, how quickly do I think it's going to grow on average over the years? Historically, the stock market has returned an average of about 8 to 10% over the last few decades. So in my case, I'm going to assume that my portfolio will be able to grow at about 8% a year. Again, your assumption may be higher or lower depending on your outlook on the economy and what sort of return you think you can get on different investments. The next field under assumed rate of return during retirement, this is going to be what I think my portfolio will be able to grow by when I retire. And in my case, I think it's going to be more conservative at that point. I'll probably be investing more in bonds. And so I'll say that my portfolio will continue to grow on average of about 4% a year. Something we need to take into consideration is inflation. Every year, the cost of living continues to rise, and historically, this has been a little over 3% on average every year. And so I'm going to assume that that trend is going to continue over the coming decades and into retirement. So I'm going to enter an annual amount of 3% for inflation. Now, the second to last field, the withdrawal rate, is one that's very important for you to take some time to determine exactly how much you want to withdraw from your portfolio each year in retirement. The standard rule of thumb that a lot of retirees follow is something called the 4% rule, which means that if they have a $1 million portfolio, they can live off of about 4% or $40,000 a year from that without having to really worry about those funds running out during the course of their retirement. And of course, this number can be adjusted up or down depending on your personal goals as well as your risk tolerance. But keep in mind that with a higher withdrawal rate, there's a slightly higher likelihood that your funds may run out during retirement, and with a lower withdrawal rate, there's a less likelihood of that happening. But in my case, I'll stay with the standard 4% rule, and we'll see how this comes out in the calculator. Now, this last field under the general information section can be a bit of a stab in the dark because it's difficult to determine exactly how much we're going to pay in taxes years down the road in retirement. We don't know if tax rates will be higher or lower, but this is one where you can just simply take your best guess, especially keeping in mind if you have tax advantaged accounts like a Roth IRA or 401k that have different tax implications. And in my case here, I'm going to assume that my effective tax rate across all of the income that I take out in retirement is going to be 15%. I'm going to assume a lower 15% because I know that I have a couple Roth accounts set up, which in retirement, these accounts are completely tax-free when you draw money out of, but I also know that I'll probably have a few other areas and sources of income that will be taxed, so I'm going to just assume that I will pay some taxes, but not too high of a rate of taxes. Moving down now to the sources of fixed income, when looking at this calculator, it really takes a holistic approach as far as any sources of income you have, as well as your expenses to base your investment portfolio number off of. So under this section, you'll take time to enter any sources of income outside of your investment portfolio, like any pensions you have from a job, rental income or royalties you have from rental properties, or something like a book that you've written. And if you're at least 65 years old, you may be eligible for Social Security, and this can be another source of fixed income that you can count on from month to month. In my situation, I'm going to assume that I don't have any other sources of fixed income when I retire, because I want to know exactly how much I need to have in my investment portfolio in order to live off of that alone. And if I happen to come across other sources of fixed income along the way, those will be bonuses on top of what I'm already planning for. Once you've gone over this section and entered any sources of fixed income that you're planning on, then you'll move down to your expenses section, which is going to be listed out on a monthly basis. This section will be important for you to determine exactly what you want your retired life to look like and exactly how much that's going to cost in each different category. For example, with this top section with rent and housing, ask yourself the question, do I plan to rent when I retire, or will I have a paid off house where my housing costs are going to be a lot lower in retirement so I can have more money for other things? I won't make you wait as I go through each of these different lines, so I'll quickly fill all these out and we'll jump back here to see exactly what the calculator's generated for us and what the numbers tell us about our retirement plan. So in looking at the numbers that I've entered under the section of expenses in retirement, we can see that I'm assuming that I'll be spending about $6,250 every single month in retirement starting in the first year. And annually, this is going to be about $75,000 a year. So this gives me some initial information to see that I need to be able to pull out $75,000 from my portfolio every year to sustain my retirement. And we also need to take into consideration our increase in inflation of 3% a year that we entered higher up on the calculator. So if we scroll back up to the top of the calculator, we can see that there's been a couple figures as well as this chart that's been generated on the right side of the worksheet. And lo and behold, the first number that we see on the top right here is our personal retirement number. So the number that you see generated in here is saying, based off of all of the information and the assumptions that you entered, that you need to have a total portfolio value, in this case of $2.1 million, in order to pull out $75,000 a year to live off of, as well as account inflation into that number. And the number that's right below this says that based off of the assumption of our assumed rate of return of 8%, that starting at the age of 25, I need to be investing a little over $600 a month into something that will give me that 8% return over the course of my 40 years in order to reach this $2.1 million goal. And as a good summary here on the right, we can take a look at this chart, which shows us exactly from our starting point in year one, where we start with our $2.1 million and we draw $75,000 a year and increase that every year with inflation, that our portfolio value will begin to decline slowly over the years. And in this case, it'll last us about 29 years in retirement. So for me, I can ask myself the question, am I okay living that lifestyle all the way until I'm 90 years old? Do I even expect to live that long, or do I expect to live even longer? If my assumption is that I'm going to live till 100 years old, then this retirement number is not going to quite work for me. So with that in mind, we can go back through the calculator to see how our retirement can look under different scenarios with different assumptions. So in my case, if my assumption is that I'm going to live longer than 90 years old and I would maybe like to have some money left over to give as an inheritance to my kids or grandkids, then I need to go back through the calculator and change some of those assumptions that I have to make that work. Particularly, I know that one thing that can really help with this is having a lower withdrawal rate in retirement. So right now I'm following the 4% rule, but because inflation's all the way up at 3%, and I'm assuming that I'm only going to get a 4% return in retirement, we can see that my balance quickly drops off in 30 years. If I want this to last longer, then I can lower my withdrawal rate to something like 3.5%. This extends it out a handful of years, and if I also assume that I can invest a little bit more aggressively during the course of retirement and get a 5% return, then my account balance drastically changes, and now my portfolio is lasting me about 13-14 years longer for retirement. Now, this is just one example of a few things that you can tweak to change your retirement plan and see how drastic of a change that can make with small tweaks. So feel free to continue to mess around with the calculator until you get the retirement numbers that you're looking for that fit your personal goal. Now, the last thing to keep in mind with this calculator is that it is a static calculator, meaning that it only takes into account one scenario for the whole course of your retirement. meaning that day one of your retirement to the end of your retirement, it assumes that you have the same cost of living through all of it. There's the same rate of inflation. You withdraw the same amount of money from your portfolio every year. So ultimately, this calculator should be used as a reference for you to see if you're on track for your overall goal, but this goal is going to be sort of a moving target over the years as your situation and your personal goals change. Make sure to download a copy of it for yourself so that you can reference it from time to time to make sure that you're on track for your personal retirement goal. That's it for today. I hope the retirement calculator is a useful tool to help you work towards your personal retirement goal, and let me know in the comments what features you would like added to this resource. If you found it helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe, as doing those things will help get this tool out to more people who could use it. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, stay happy, stay humble, and take care.